Right now on Upfront.
The Trump factor.
I'm incredibly honored to have President Trump's endorsement. It's the greatest honor of my life.
Congressman Mike Gallagher resigning in just days. Now the Trump endorsement to replace him amidst the growing field.
We always win.
Our guest this Sunday, former Republican Congressman Reed Ribble on the GOP battle in his former district.
Then the Biden factor.
Hello, Wisconsin.
President Biden in Wisconsin again, Congress back in Washington, impeachment, foreign aid, a razor-thin majority. Democratic Congresswoman Gwen Moore to discuss it all from Capitol Hill.
Kenosha's new mayor.
I'm not a member of either party. I think there's good ideas on both sides of the aisle.
48 hours from being sworn in, we're one-on-one with Mayor-elect David Bogdala, the politics of the city and how residents may vote in November.
This is Upfront with Jaron Jordan and political director Matt Smith.
Hi, everyone, and thanks for joining us. Congressman Mike Gallagher officially resigns his seat on Friday, and already the implications playing out this weekend. The Green Bay Republican exiting the House early after announcing he won't seek re-election this fall. The move leaving Republicans with just a one-vote majority in the House.
And now the intensifying primary battle to replace him, Gallagher in the 8th Congressional. This past week, former President Donald Trump weighing in, endorsing Tony Weed, the former owner of a chain of gas stations in Green Bay, who officially entered the race this past week.
I'm incredibly honored to have President Trump's endorsement. It's the greatest honor of my life to have it. And I'm looking forward to working with President Trump to work on the big issues that are going on in Washington right now.
In a Truth Social post, Trump urged former state Senator Roger Roth to get out of the race. Roth just days before at Trump's rally in Green Bay, posting pictures online greeting supporters. State Senator Andre Jacques there as well and running for the seat too. Former Republican Congressman Reed Ribble served the 8th Congressional from 2011 to 2017. He joins us now. Congressman, welcome back to the show.
Hey, it is really good to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Let's first talk about Mike Gallagher, his decision to resign early. I'm curious what you make of that. He's received some criticism for that, even from the right.
Yeah, he's certainly been criticized. I mean, you can't avoid that. And, I don't second guess choices that members of Congress make on behalf of their family. He and his wife talked. He's got 2 young children. He was going to be leaving at the end of the year anyway. And let's face it, Congress really isn't doing anything, and they're not going to be doing anything. This last few months in session is going to be all messaging bills. People make a big to-do about only a one-seat majority after Mike leaves, but shortly there'll be some special elections, and that'll go back up to a 3-seat majority. And so I think it's Mike has to make a decision based on his family, and I think that's what he did.
Looking ahead to the primary in this race later this year, how would you describe the makeup of the 8th Congressional District right now politically?
As far as the district itself goes, you've got some bright red, very Trump, America First kind of counties there in the rural areas of Wisconsin's 8th District. And then you've got some blue areas in Door County, inner city of Green Bay and Appleton. And so it did go for Trump by a pretty good majority in the last presidential race, and so it's definitely more red than blue. But I do think if you go too far into the mega space, that you could open the door for a competent Democrat to once again really challenge in that district.
Let's talk about the Trump endorsement. Tony Weed, a businessman whom I'm assuming a lot of people in the district don't necessarily know who he is. He urged Roger Roth to get out of the primary. Is this going to test the power of Trump in the district, and is he going to win?
A little bit is going to test it, but Donald Trump hasn't been the most effective at choosing candidates. And so it certainly, though, should help Tony Weed in the primary, but it may not help him, or it might come back and bite the voters in the general election. And so I think the voters up in Northeast Wisconsin, they know who Roger Roth is. They know who Andre Jacques is. They're learning and beginning to meet Tony Weed. And they're going to do their analysis and make their vote. I do not think Roger should get out of the race. I don't think Andre should get out of the race. It's far too soon. And they should go ahead and make their case.
Kristen Lyerly is an OBGYN who's already announced that she's entering this race as a Democrat. Do you think a Democrat can win this race, this seat in 2024?
I do. I think it'll be an uphill lift. But I do think a Democrat could win as long as that Democrat takes a more moderate tone on things. And let's face it, abortion is a very hot issue. She knows a lot about that topic because of her career. And on the left, you've got abortion as kind of the driving thing that'll motivate voters. On the right, you've got issues like the border and inflation. And so she's got to come up with answers for the border and inflation to get independent voters. And whoever's the Republican nominee has to come up with an answer for abortion to get independent voters. So it's going to be very, very interesting to see how these candidates manage these hot button issues, which are all very difficult.
Reed, you're also part of the group Keep Our Republic. We had Kathy Bernier on just a few weeks ago. I'm curious what you make of Trump continuing to say things like he won Wisconsin in 2020 when he didn't, talking about fraud just as recently on Green Bay Talk Radio this past week.
Yeah, I know it. He just seems obsessed with campaigning on a 2020 issue when you've got these almost gifts that the Biden administration has given him with chaos at the border and with inflation. And President Trump might write his own epitaph here politically if he continues to look backwards. Wisconsin's elections are safe. They were safe in 2020, safe in 2022. They'll be safe in 2024, and they're on a path of continuous improvement in that regard. And so it's interesting because the party is saying do mail-in voting, vote early, and Trump is saying don't, and that kind of suppresses the vote.
This may help in a primary, but when you look to the general statewide and in the 8th, could this hurt Republicans?
It certainly could, because if you take a look at what happened in Georgia and Arizona in the U.S. Senate races, if you don't think that your vote counts, if you think it's stolen or they're going to cheat it, why would you go bother to vote at all? And in a swing state like Wisconsin, that might be decided by 15 or 20 or 25,000 votes. They need every single vote they can get. And so he should stop talking about that if he wants to be victorious.
Former Republican Congressman from the 8th, Reed Ribble. Reed, thanks so much for your time, like always.
It's always great to be with you guys. Thank you.
President Biden again in Wisconsin this past week. The president announcing the administration's latest efforts targeting student debt relief that would impact nearly 30 million Americans. President Biden making that announcement at Madison Area Technical College, his third stop to the battleground state this year alone. Let's get to it all right now with Democratic Congresswoman Gwen Moore, who joins us from Washington. Congresswoman Moore, welcome back to Up Front.
Oh, thank you for having me.
We just talked with former Congressman Reed Ribble. Just want to start with your quick reaction to Congressman Mike Gallagher resigning this week.
You know, I think that I wish Mike Gallagher well. He was a very serious legislator, and I think that a lot of the nonsense around him motivated him to use his talents in a different arena. And I think that his early departure was because he had sustained pressure to support ridiculous notions like impeaching Joe Biden for no reason, impeaching the Homeland Security Secretary for no reason. And I think that he's a serious person. He wants to be taken seriously. And I think that he just did not want his reputation sullied by the kinds of votes that he was being pressured to undertake.
Congresswoman, as you know, there's some drama in the House, especially when you look to the Republican side of things. This feud between Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene and Speaker Johnson ongoing, to put it mildly. She has introduced that motion to vacate again. I'm curious, if it comes to a vote on the floor, would you vote to keep Mike Johnson as Speaker?
Well, let me just say this. I so wish that Mike Johnson had chosen to go next door and visit with Hakeem Jeffries rather than to fly off to Florida, to Mar-a-Lago. That would have instructed me a lot more about what I should do. Obviously, I have no loyalty whatsoever to Mike Johnson, but it is rather chaotic to continue to have speaker after speaker. And if there could be an agreement and an arrangement between our leadership and the speaker, I think that Mike Johnson would not have to yield his seat. I don't think it's a good sign that he's running off to Mar-a-Lago instead of securing the kinds of agreements and arrangements that he could have made with our party.
You said recently that you were the target of a swatting incident. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, I had a SWAT team arrive at my home. saying that they had gotten reports that there was a woman in my basement bound and tied up and being held hostage. And I immediately recognized that it was a swatting effort. I invited them in, and of course, felt very sorry, not for myself so much as for the resources that I know the police department doesn't have to answer these kinds of calls. I just think it's a misuse of our public service. And if people want to protest, that there are ways to do it without exploiting our resources. You know, I have not had any problem with people protesting outside my home. I have left them alone, but I do think that that this is outside the boundaries of decency to have done that.
Have you learned who is responsible for this, and what do you make
No,
of it?
I don't know who's done it. I don't know whether there are any active investigations going on, but I do think that that whoever did it should be held to account.
In talking with your colleagues, I'm assuming you're not alone in the House with incidents like this?
Senator Tammy Baldwin was swatted the very next morning. And I do think that it's an effort on some people's part to diminish our popularity and our credibility so that they can get at much larger targets. I do feel concerned that people will be confused and misguided and misled. And this may decrease. This is a voter suppression tactic to some extent for the general election in November. I hope people are not tricked by this.
And quickly, before you go, Congresswoman, here in the state, Justice Ann Walsh Bradley just announced she will not seek re-election this upcoming spring, another critical move for the state Supreme Court. I'm curious your reaction to that, and if there's anyone you would like to see run for that seat.
And she's been an amazing jurist. She's been an amazing jurist. And I wish her well in her retirement. I do know that we are going to be trying to recruit someone that is capable, who's experienced, and someone who really shares the values of protecting the rights of voters, protecting the rights of people's bodily autonomy, protecting the rights of every voter to have their voice heard. And so I will be looking and listening and waiting to see who that candidate might be.
Any names you want to name right now?
No, it won't be Gwen Moore, though.
All right. Congresswoman Gwen Moore, Democrat from Milwaukee. Congresswoman, like always, hey, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, too. Have a good weekend.
Up next, 48 hours away, Kenosha's new mayor sworn in. Next, we are one-on-one, the politics of Kenosha ahead of November.